One type of negative comment I receive relates to my children and their diet. I'm fairly frequently told that feeding my kids a vegan diet is unhealthy for them, even child abuse. Supposedly, kids cannot possibly get all the nutrients they need from plants alone, so vegan kids are inherently malnourished. But what does the science say? Are vegan kids inherently malnourished or more likely to be malnourished than meat-eating kids? Lucky for us, 2 reviews on vegan kids came out just this last month. Nutrient intake and status in children and adolescents consuming plant-based diets compared to meat eaters, a systematic review, and health aspects of vegan diets among children and adolescents, a systematic review and meta-analysis. Both reviews look at nutrient intake, which is how much of a particular nutrient that the kid is getting in their diet, as well as nutrient status, which is how much of a particular nutrient is in the kid's blood at the time of testing. But the first study I mentioned, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name, so I'm just going to say Nicole because that's her first name. Nicole et al. Is more comprehensive, so I'm going to focus on that one, and then I'll turn to the other one, Kohler et al., because that one looks at height. Some past studies suggested that vegan kids are shorter, other ones found no correlation, so collating those results may be illuminating, maybe. So, Nicole, they limited study selection to those published in 2000 or later, which is great because we know that vegan diets 20 plus years ago were quite a bit different than they are now, right? They didn't have access to the swath of vegan products that we do today. There was a higher chance that they did not supplement for B12 or vitamin D. Ages ranged from 2 to 18. They did not want to include infants, so 2 to 18. They ended up with 30 studies, again, looking at nutrient intake, nutrient status, or both. The nutrients specifically that they looked at, again, comprehensive caloric intake, protein, fiber, and fat, along with almost all of the essential micronutrients, vitamin A, B1, B2, B3, B6, folate, B12, C, D, E, iron, zinc, iodine, calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus. I think we can skip a discussion on fiber and polyunsaturated fats and saturated fat. Of course, vegans are going to get way more fiber and polyfats and way less saturated fat. I'll also skip vitamins B1, B2, B3, B6, folate, vitamin C, vitamin E, magnesium, and phosphorus because the results are, again, just not very interesting. Vegans either got more than omnivorous kids or there was no difference. So that leaves us with energy intake, protein, omega-3s, vitamins A, D, and 12, and for minerals, iron, iodine, zinc, and calcium. Energy intake was the same between groups, which is fantastic. That is one of the things I hear, that vegan kids can't possibly get enough calories, so they're going to be super hungry all the time and super thin. Doesn't seem to be the case here. Vegan kids tend to consume less protein than omnivorous kids, but still within normal range. As the researchers note, there may be issues with bioavailability, so it may be beneficial for vegan kids to aim for more protein, especially in light of bone health. Higher protein intake may increase bone mineral density. Only 2 studies on omega-3 fatty acids, one Finnish and one German. Unsurprisingly, vegans got more ALA, whereas meat eaters got more DHA. In the German study, none of the groups met adequate intake for DHA. Now, it's possible that conversion of some of that extra ALA to DHA makes a difference for vegan kids, but we don't know because there aren't any studies on DHA status and vegan kids. For vegan adults, studies consistently show lower serum levels than vegetarians and omnivores, but it's not clear if that matters. And as pointed out in this detailed paper, most studies found no evidence of deficiency when using elevated levels of DA as a marker. Vitamin A intake was fine for all groups. Maybe. It wasn't always clear if total vitamin A intake was recorded in a study or if they used RAE, retinol activity equivalent, or RE. Basically, vitamin A from plants has to be converted to true vitamin A, preformed vitamin A. So if they are just using total vitamin A and not converting that to RAE, it could artificially inflate the vitamin A intake for kids getting lots of vitamin A from plants, aka vegan kids. Like with DHA, vitamin A status would be useful here. There is some on vegetarians, but I only found one on vegans, vegan kids to be specific. They tested for retinol binding protein, which is a marker for vitamin A deficiency, and they found all of the vegan kids to be insufficient, all 6 of the vegan kids. So not, maybe not super useful. More research required, as per usual. Vitamin B12. Well, that was low in the vegans, of course. Just kidding. Isn't that exciting? So, while the food, B12 from food, was obviously higher for meat eaters, much higher, once they included supplement use, it totally flipped, and vegans actually got the most B12, like way more than meat eaters. And we see this reflected in B12 status. There's no difference between groups when supplement users are included. It's hard not to be excited, and I really hope that vegan educators and really anyone who has been pushing for vegans to take B12, people like Jack Norris and Jenny Messina, I really hope they feel super good about the state of B12 intake and B12 status over particularly the last decade or so, because it looks like this is no longer an issue for the vegan community because of education, because we all know we're supposed to take B12 because of, Jack Norris's wonderful research on B12, and we do it. We take our B12. It's just awesome. This one kind of surprised me. Vitamin D. I fully expected vegan kids to have lower levels, but no, across all studies, average vitamin D levels were higher in vegans and meat eaters compared to those of vegetarians. And again, this is due to supplementation. Like vitamin A, total iron intake doesn't tell the whole story for vegan kids, right? We get non-heme iron from plants, which is not as bioavailable as heme iron from animal flesh. So vegan adults and vegan kids may need a bit more iron. Luckily, they found that vegan kids did indeed get more iron. They got the highest amount of iron, and when they adjusted for bioavailability, only 1 out of 5 studies found vegans below estimated average requirement. In terms of status, ferritin levels were mostly in range for all groups. Iron deficiency was higher in vegans and highest in vegetarians, interestingly, but anemia prevalence was similar across groups. Zinc, again, we have bioavailability issue. Once that's taken into account, mean zinc intake for vegans was below EAR in 2 out of 5 studies. But in all 4 studies that considered supplementation, vegan kids were fine. Supplements saving the day again. Lower intake for vegan kids, but no difference when supplement users are included. Everybody sucks when it comes to calcium, unfortunately. Most studies found calcium below EAR for all of the groups. Now, as I've talked about before, we don't really know how much calcium we need for anyone, including vegan kids and vegan adults. We don't really know how important calcium actually is for bone health, and we now know that there are other nutrients that are very important, if not just as important, if not more important than calcium, like vitamin D, magnesium, possibly protein. So studies on bone health would probably be a lot more useful here, but that evidence is very limited. The evidence we have specifically on vegan kids is rife with issues. It's just not reliable. The review includes 3 looking at vegetarian kids, and results are mixed. So let's turn to the second study really quick. We have 18 studies total, and they did not restrict year of publication. 3 of the studies are pretty old, late 80s, early 90s, but most of the studies are very recent from just the last few years. They got similar conclusions to Nicole regarding nutrient intake and status. They also looked at selenium intake, which was similar between groups. And as I said earlier, height. Now, at first they did find an association between veganism for kids and shorter height, but the difference disappeared when they removed just one study. It's this one on Austrian kids. The focus of the study was not on height, but they did record height. They did report on it. As you can see here, there's a huge discrepancy between vegans and meat eaters. Of course, the mean height for a 15-year-old is going to be higher than the mean height for a 13, almost 14-year-old. Honestly, I'm surprised it's only a couple inches, given that this is like big puberty time. Point is, the difference in height was no longer statistically significant once they excluded the study. Now, does that mean vegan kids are not shorter than meat-eating kids? No, the evidence we have cannot tell us that, even if it were good quality evidence, which it is not. The evidence on vegan kids in general isn't great for various reasons, including just not enough participants. Most of the 18 studies in Kohler and the 30 studies in Nicole included fewer than 50 vegan participants. And a really interesting point from Nicole, in 14 of the 30 studies, the vegan kids included were part of a religious community, which, known for following consensus on medicine and nutrition, aka possibly less likely to supplement and eat a well-balanced vegan diet, maybe. Or they had been referred to the research center for dietary counseling. Now, this could just be because their pediatrician, nutritionist, whatever, was concerned about a vegan diet for kids just in general, or it could have been because they actually saw issues, right? Like maybe they knew the parents didn't give the kids B12 supplements, or even that the kids seemed unwell. Obviously, when we're looking at whether or not a vegan diet is healthy for normal kids, for the general, child population, we want studies on healthy kids. So while we can confidently say that vegan kids get plenty of vitamin C, plenty of folate, right? Because the foods they eat contain these things. We don't even really need studies for this. We can't confidently say that vegan kids get enough zinc, for example. Not even a handful of studies on zinc intake and only one on zinc status. That finished one with only 6 vegan participants. And just to be clear, by plenty of zinc, I don't mean like zinc deficiency. None of these studies are finding clinically significant nutrient deficiency for vegan kids outside of like not supplementing for B12, right? It's more like being slightly under, how much zinc they need for optimal health. And to be clear, this goes both ways. The studies finding negative results for vegan kids are also very limited. Like this Polish study on height that found vegan kids to be a full inch shorter than omnivorous kids. It got all the press when it came out because, of course, it did. But as Nutrition Made Simple points out, the researchers failed to make several statistical corrections. And once those corrections are made, there's no difference in height. Neither review mentioned choline, which is unsurprising. There's very little information on choline status for adults in general, especially vegan adults, and there's nothing for vegan kids, no study that I could find, which is unfortunate. We're not talking about deficiency. Virtually no one is at risk for a choline deficiency, but higher choline intake may improve cognitive development, and vegan kids likely get a lot less choline than meat-eating ones. I definitely feel a bit vindicated here. I'm the supplement girl. I'm the supplement queen, if you will. I think they're really important just beyond like B12 and vitamin D. I take a multi, my kids take their multis, and in Nicole, we see supplementation make a difference several times, right? We see differences in intake and status disappear once supplementation is taken into account. If you're feeding your kids vegan, please, please, please consider putting them on a multi. Obviously, talk to your pediatrician, but going by the evidence, it's probably pretty important, right? It's not just B12 and vitamin D unless you are really on top of their zinc, the zinc and iron and iodine that they're getting from food. We really like Rinzo's. We've been using this brand, for years now. My kids' iron is always great for what it's worth. But it's not just about supplements. Obviously, healthy food is first and foremost. And by the looks of it, vegan kids are doing pretty well. They're eating lots of healthy foods. I love this one passage from Nicole et al. It's something you rarely see from papers like this. Like, yes, there are concerns for vegan kids, and parents need to be aware of those concerns and make sure that all nutrient needs are being met. But the same can be said for omnivorous kids. Regardless of diet type, parents and caregivers would benefit from dietary counseling to improve diet quality to ensure it contains all of the nutrients needed for the healthy growth and development of their children. It's easy to see the opposition to vegan diets for kids as kind of politically motivated, I guess, or just a dislike of veganism, right? Using it as yet another excuse to not have to think about animal welfare or the environment. But I think the concern is more than just anti-vegan sentiment. There is a important difference between malnutrition in omnivorous kids and malnutrition in vegan kids. A meat-eating kid getting too much saturated fat, not enough fiber, they may be constipated, they may be overweight, but the big issues for these kids, like cancer, heart disease, these aren't going to show up for decades. And we just don't care very much about what happens to middle-aged dudes. But a 4-year-old dude, a 4-year-old vegan child deficient in iron or zinc or B12, that is concerning right then and there. Sustained deficiencies in any of these can cause irreparable damage to children's bodies, to their brains. It is scarier than a fiber deficiency. So I get it. I get people being overly concerned about vegan diets for kids, but it's really unfair to omnivorous kids to not show really the same level of concern, not worrying about their fiber intake and their potassium intake and their saturated fat intake, because it's not really going to have that much of an impact on them as kids. Like, who cares once they're grown up? Then it's their problem. Like, it's shit. It's total shit. I know no one is saying that, but our actions are saying that. We should do our best to start kids off on the right foot when it comes to nutrition, and the evidence is clear that first world parents in general are not doing that. So in conclusion, we didn't really learn anything new here. As great as this is, it's pretty much what we already knew if you are really familiar with vegan nutrition and vegan nutrition for kids. If you're going to feed your kid a vegan diet, please get nutrition counseling. Make sure they are getting B12 and DHA to be safe. A multi containing iodine and zinc and iron is probably a really good idea. Calcium, probably a really good idea to give them some calcium fortified soy milk, something with protein, and vitamin A sources, right? Give them their carrots and their leafy greens and pumpkin. And protein, of course, right? Make sure they are getting their legumes. And by doing so, you're also covering things like zinc and iron, right? Typically, the higher protein plant sources are going to be higher in those nutrients as well. I think the biggest question mark for me is bone mineral density. I would like personally just more research on that because it has been rather confusing, not just for vegan kids, but for vegan adults as well. I do strength train regularly. I think that is very, very important. I mean, we know that's very, very important for bone health, and vegans get plenty of magnesium. I take vitamin D. I get calcium from fortified soy milk every day. So I'm doing what I believe is good. Oh, I get lots of protein, right? I'm doing the best I can, what I think is the best for bone mineral density, but there could be more that we could be doing, not just vegans, but everyone. So yeah, I would like more research in that area. It's so awesome how many vegan studies there are now. What did I do? I looked at 2013. I just searched vegan on PubMed and then filtered it to 2013, a decade ago. And I got fewer than 50 hits. And then I did the same for this year, which is not even over yet, and got well over 300, right? Like, it's just so cool. It's not like super surprising, I guess. Obviously, veganism is trendier and has become exponentially more trendy, I guess, just in the past few years, but it's really cool to see. Like, again, we have 2 systematic reviews on vegan kids, not just on veganism, but on like kind of a specific part or a specific population of vegans just in the last month. And I did vegan for just, the last month or so and got more than 20 hits just in the last month. Again, 2013, all of 2013, there were less than 50. So, it's cool. One of the recent studies I just saw like highlighted or in bold, vegan meat smells aroma or something like that. And I was like, wait, what? And it's really interesting. Apparently B1, thiamine, however you say it, is a factor in like the smell of meat, like high temperature cooked meat. Part of the meat aroma comes from that. And so these researchers were looking at brewer's yeast, 20 different strains, something like that, to see, I guess, which ones had the most B1. So potentially which ones would offer the greatest like meaty smell, to add to like vegan meats and whatnot. Yeah, It's interesting. It's not for me, but yeah, it's cool. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed this. I would love it if you liked the video, if you did, and subscribe and hit the bell and turn on notifications. There's so many things. Thank you so much to my patrons at patreon.com/unnaturalvegan and my members here on YouTube. I do post 2 exclusive videos a month. The first one is just like a little vloggy thing, just talking about whatever's going on with me. And then the second one is a controversial topic that's unrelated to veganism. My most recent one is actually on teacher salary, which is pretty relevant to me here in Portland, Oregon. For those who don't know, public teachers are on strike here. So yeah, my 7-year-old is not in school, hasn't been in school for 5 days. I think this is the 5th day. And they actually missed the 2 days before that because they were sick. So yeah, they've missed quite a bit of school. But yeah, you can join $5 plus over on Patreon or here on YouTube to get access to that. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you so much, guys. New video soon. Some of the vegetarian results were interesting, right? Like, it's not surprising that they got more saturated fat than vegans, but less than meat eaters. But what was it? Their vitamin D was actually the lowest. It was actually below the cutoff value of 20. So that was interesting. And then their fiber was shit. It's so interesting. I wonder if it's so hard for vegan parents not to rely heavily on the dairy and the eggs. I mean, I do know someone who went vegetarian when they were very young, and they basically lived on a cheese and bread diet, and they were overweight. Do you like my little tree? I don't know how to do this. No, I'm going backwards. Oh my God. Oh, there we go. I did it. Little trees, got them from Target. The big one was $3, which is a bit much, but the other ones were just $1, and they're so cute. The colors are like so perfect for this room. Oh my God. It's Christmassy in here, but it's also Halloween-y in here, thanks to my shirt. I hope you guys had a good Halloween. We did. We still have a lot of candy left over. Man, like, I did well. I think the last couple years, I don't think I overbought. We didn't have a lot left, but this year, yeah, and I don't think I bought more. Like, I don't know what to expect. Last year, it rained the entire time, but we still got a big turnout. And this year, I feel like there were fewer kids. I don't know, but we had a fun time. The kids had such a fun time and got so much candy. Definitely the most houses we've ever gone to. I just kind of kept going because partner took baby back home after like 30 minutes or so. And then I just kept going with kids. It's like, all right, we're going back home. It's like, oh, wait, we haven't stopped at this house. Wait, this house is really cool. What about this one? And people are always asking, what do we do with the non-vegan stuff? I talked about it on stream the Friday before, but for those who missed it, what we do, which is really smart, partner came up with this. We get home, like as soon as we get home, I'm like, all right, give me the candy. I'm gonna separate. And I can do it pretty damn fast now. Like I know what's vegan and what's not. And so I separate everything, and we take the non-vegan stuff and just put it in our candy bowls outside for other kids. And every year now we get rid of all of the non-vegan stuff that way. Actually, that's not true. This year I did miss one. I actually missed a Reese's cup in my 4-year-old's bucket. And so partner went outside, and there were some people working on our neighbor's house. I was like, hey, you want this? They're like, yeah. And I make sure to get like really good candy that they like. So I got them, the more expensive stuff, right? The plant-based Reese's cups. They each got one whole packet that has 2, cups in it. And they each got a full bar of the what's the other one? The Hershey's chocolate, pieces. They each got a full bar of those. Cocoa Mel's, my 7-year-old loves those. Lots of Skittles and Sour Patch, which people give out a lot of those anyway, because a lot of kids love them. My kids love them. They love Laffy Taffy, which I was surprised. It's one of my favorites. Like, it's one of those, when you think about it, it's like, it's kind of gross. I mean, all candy's like that, really, right? Anything that's not chocolate, like Skittles, there's just like so much food coloring. Like, when I think about it, it's kind of gross. And Blow Pops, I love them so much, but when I think about it, like, you're crunching into the gum. Oh, It's just gross. But yeah, Laffy Taffy, I don't know. Laffy Taffy and Airheads, nasty, man, but delicious. So delicious. Who am I kidding? I can think too much about literally any food and I can make it disgusting in my mind. It is the opposite of a superpower. One bad thing, little baby, just gave him some Smarties. That was it. Because, like, they can't really eat anything else. A little bit of chocolate, but any of the chewy stuff, Skittles and stuff, right? You don't want to give that to a 15-month-old. So they just got some Smarties and then woke us up at, I don't even know what time in the morning, 2 or something. And I could tell by the cry, this wasn't just them waking up for a few minutes and going back to sleep. Like, something was wrong. And I go in there and they had thrown up, and it was so sad. They threw up and they were on the other side of the crib, just trying to get as far as they could away from it. And it was on them and they're just like, ah, this is disgusting. I had to get partner up and he had to help, get them cleaned up. And then I think they threw up like 2 or 3 more times. We were up for a while. I had to give them a bath and calm them down and everything. So, yeah, I learned my lesson there. They keep looking at the Smarties and candy. They're like, oh, like, no, you don't know. You don't get shit. We did actually cook one of our weird green-blue pumpkins that we got. I forgot what the variety is called, but the dude, the owner of the pumpkin patch, told us that Google told him that they're like one of the best eating pumpkins. And so that was fun cutting into that. Oh, it was so hard. It was a little one too. They're so dense. But yeah, I just cut them into cubes and roasted them, and not bad. A little weird. The kids were like, no, I'm gonna throw up. No. But partner and I and baby, yeah, it's all right. I'd rather have potatoes